when somebody is raised in an environment where everything is at your disposal, you've never had to work for anything, you've never had to go without, you think that you're the origin of your own wealth. And that's a problem. Jesus told us, he said, look, it's God or mammon. So it's either the Lord or it's money. He's not saying that money is evil. It's the love of money which is the root of evil.
Do you wish you had a family sometimes?
When you're free from marriage, from a wife, you also have a capacity to be more available to the people, to those around you.
Do you fight temptation?
Yeah, yeah.
Is faith in God a way to cope with the unfairness and harshness of life?
No, no. Think about it. How many martyrs, how many Christians have been martyred? Over 5,000 alone in Nigeria last year. So 2023, over 5,000 Nigerians were martyred. When I was in the seminary in Rome, we had 2 young priests from Iraq who knew that there was a good chance they would be martyred, and in fact, they were gunned down during the celebration of the Mass.
Why?
Because they're Christians. And it was hatred of the faith.
Who was targeting them?
There were different religious groups, extremist groups. So if Christians are the most persecuted in the world, you would think that you would no longer want to practice the faith if you knew that you were going to be a target.
Are Christians the most persecuted?
Yes, they are. All the data show that. There are different religions that are persecuted, absolutely. But Christians are the most persecuted throughout the world. Yeah.
Why don't, I mean, that's news to me too. I don't think a lot of people feel that way. Why?
Well, feeling is one thing, facts are another. So the facts bear.
Are the facts being hidden from the public?
I don't know if they're being hidden, but I think that they're just not being presented. And I can't tell you the motivations for why they're not being presented.
There have been so many brutal killings in the past. Why do we remember the crucifixion?
Well, every brutal killing in the past and every innocent suffering, I think there are several that we do remember, and they were terrible events. They were tragedies for humanity. But the crucifixion is different, because the crucifixion is God himself who takes on flesh, who is crucified. So God, the originator of all being, the sustainer of all being, love himself, comes into the world for our salvation, to restore our relationship with God, and yet he's spat upon, he's flogged, and he's crucified.
Is it because of the crucifying, that the crucifix, is that one of the reasons why it has lasted so long? The method that they used to kill him?
Which is the cruelest possible thing. What I would do, what I would recommend when you have a chance, read Tom Holland's book, Dominion. It will be a classic. And he starts off about Roman crucifixion. It's the cruelest form of capital punishment. And so the fact that Jesus was subjected to that, and the fact that the Lord, he wasn't dragged there. Jesus, it says clearly, Jesus says, I lay down my life freely. So that God would do that, right? He would take on the worst thing we can offer him, knowing that that is what's going to save us, is really like the cross is supposed to move us to tears out of sorrow for what happened, but also that God would allow life, that he would allow this to happen so that wouldn't happen, so we would be saved. That's the first thing. And it also shows us of something else. The cross, Jesus crucified, shows us of the reality and the horror of sin. See, today in society, we no longer talk about sin, even in the church. Very rarely we talk about sin. We talk about woundedness. We talk about issues of self-esteem. We talk about all sorts of things, but sin is what is the cause of the severing of our relationship with God.
Why are poor people more religious?
Why are poor people more religious? I struggle with that question, because I've met many wealthy people that are also religious. When you have fewer material possessions at your disposal, you come to recognize innately that we rely on someone else. When we're born into the world, Your parents didn't just kind of leave you there once you were born and said you're on your own, right? You needed the help of other people, right? So we are dependent. By nature, we're dependent. When some people become incredibly wealthy as they get a lot of money, it's easy to forget our vulnerability and the fact that we depend on other people. When somebody is raised in an environment where everything is at your disposal, you've never had to work for anything, you've never had to go without, you think that you're the origin of your own wealth. And that's a problem. Jesus told us, he said, look, it's God or mammon. So it's either the Lord or it's money. He's not saying that money is evil. It's the love of money which is the root of evil.
Can they truly be religious if they are wealthy?
Absolutely, because if you come to the right, if you're a real follower of Christ, you recognize that everything is gift, and therefore, St. Paul says, the more God has given us, the more we're accountable for. So if I've been given all of this wealth, this material wealth, I'm supposed to use it for the building up of the kingdom of God, to do the greatest good I can for humanity. Look at the great saints like Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. So she was beautiful. She had the finest jewels. She had everything. And then she took off her crown and she said, how can I wear a crown when my Lord and my God wore a crown of thorns? So how can I wear this crown of gold and jewels? So she refused to wear it.
Is it difficult being a priest?
Is it difficult? I think it's the most beautiful thing. And I think it's also more of a challenge. I would say it's more of a challenge than I expected, but for different reasons.
Than you expected?
Than I expected. When I was in Italy and I was in Mongolia, right? So I had different, I received the priesthood and I was off in the missions. But then when I came back to Canada, I started to realize that society was becoming undone, that we had lost we've lost the memory of the foundation of our culture and what makes the West so good and so beautiful, and which allows us for our freedoms. And that everything has been called into question about the most basic aspects of life. For me, I find I wasn't as prepared for that.
You have to abstain from a lot of things too, like priests, right?
Well, we abstain. What happens is that as a priest, so all of us are called to love. So, but all of us are called to express our love differently. So as a priest, we don't get married. So in a sense, on a spiritual level, we're married to the church, right? So this is why I have this ring on.
But isn't it an extreme way to live?
Well, Jesus lived that way. St. Paul lived that way. Many of the saints live that way. Many other faith traditions also live that way. And I would say that if we only see it as a deprivation, then of course it's going to be more of a problem. There's also a sublimation and a recognition and a redirection of what chastity actually means. See, I cannot be chaste just for the sake of being chaste. It has to be for a greater good. And the greater good is that one day I want to go to God and I want to be in heaven. And I know that the church requires this for me as a priest in the Latin rite of the church. And I also realize that there are many people that abstain for different reasons and not always for altruistic ones. So I have a certain freedom, as St. Paul tells us in Scripture. He says, marriage is a beautiful thing, because I would never prohibit anyone from marriage. But he says that, but also when you're free from marriage, from a wife, you also have a capacity to be more available to the people, to those around you. And that has been my experience. Again, I have friends that are priests that are married, but I also know that I do have this freedom also to move around. Think about it. Since I was ordained.
Travel, you mean?
Yeah, I've been moved from place to place. When you're trying to uproot a family all the time, it's not so simple.
Do you wish you had a family sometimes?
I do have a family. My parish is my family. So my parish is my family, and they're my primary concern. I have a grandniece. I have my nieces and nephews. My niece and nephew. I've got my family. I've got my biological family. But for us as Christians, it's different, though. See, for us for Christians, we see people say blood is thicker than water, but for Christians, it's different. We say the spirit is thicker than blood. So whereas the human family, the natural family is absolutely important and beautiful, I also know that as a priest, so every man is created to be a father, whether spiritual, biological, or both. for myself, it's in the spiritual realm. And when I baptize a child, I baptize someone, I become, in a sense, their father spiritually by bringing them to God. So my life is full.
Do you
Yeah,
fight temptation?
yeah, yeah,
How does one
absolutely.
deal with temptation?
That's a good question. Exercise. So
You work
physical
out?
activity. Every day I run.
Oh,
So
run.
running exercise, running every day, making sure that I'm not watching things that are inappropriate and not listening to things that are inappropriate.
Like you
Fasting is also
listening, you mean
important.
like music or
I love music, but
like
being
hip
careful
hop
what
and
I
stuff?
listen to. I wouldn't listen to certain music that's like sexual in nature and
Okay.
stuff. So I kind of avoid that. And then one of the things that the Desert Fathers recognized is the need for moderation of food. So fasting, it seems like because all the passions are kind of tied together. So if I'm able to say no to what is good, like so food is good and it's also necessary. If I'm able to say no to what is good, then I'm also able to say no to what is bad. Again, sex in the context of marriage is beautiful, but outside of that is sinful. And therefore, I also have to ensure that I need to control one in order to control the other thing. But yeah, there's certain days that are going to be, you feel the tension more, but it also, it's not, it doesn't always last, right? It kind of comes and it goes. But that's the same for for the Buddhist monks. That's for anyone who's practicing chastity. Even for husbands and wives, I know a lot of husbands and wives that are not constantly, they're not making love every day, right? So their relationship, it changes also with children as they get older, but there's different ways you can show love to people. Otherwise, if that was the only way, then we'd be in trouble.